My name is Alice, and I work on BHIS's ANTISOC team, which is the continuous penetration testing offering that provide. Um, and been doing this for about a year or so, and feel like I learned quite a bit about what we do and about just social engineering in general. So I kind of wanted to talk about that and share that. So first things first, social engineering. I think that probably a lot of the people in the room are pretty familiar with this, but not everyone is. So real quick, just definition that I stole from Wikipedia. Social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information, or what most girls do to survive high school. So, you know, now that you know about social engineering, what would you or anyone or threat actors or whoever use it for? And the answer is whatever you want. Really, the sky's kind of the limit. Um, some of the targets that we commonly will go after, or that we see threat actors commonly go after, are obviously credentials and accounts, any sort of financial info, sensitive info, trade secrets, you know, password lists, whatever. And using it to get into any sort of physical workplaces through server farms or workplaces, whatever. Um, yeah, just getting access to whatever you want is really the entire point of that. So before we actually talk about the help desks themselves and get super into that, I want to kind of mention my job history because I do think it's kind of relevant to a lot of the success that I personally have had with social engineering. And most of the jobs that I've had up into and including my previous one right before BHIS were almost entirely customer service jobs and directly talking to people either face to face or, over the phone. And going through customer service jobs, at least for me, really helped my just general overall communication skills. Because again, normally I don't sound quite this awkward, just slightly. And how to effectively de-escalate situations and just, talk to people, how to build trust, how to become friends with people really quickly. Whether you're selling stuff or providing technical support, these are really handy skills to have. I have also worked in a bunch of different call centers. I've helped run and worked on help desk, doing billing, doing sales, doing technical support. And when you're doing jobs that are over the phone, you can't pick up on a lot of the same indicators that you normally would when you're talking person to person. You're not going to pick up on sort of body language, how they're standing, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of jokingly call this hearing body language, but most people who really thrive in these sort of positions over time will start paying more and more attention to other things, like how fast someone is talking. Are they talking really fast like I am because they're nervous? If you're asking them questions, are they giving you one word answer? If you're like, hey, how's your day going? And they're like, fine. Or if you ask them, hey, how's your day going? Like, oh, it's great. It's hanging out with my kids, hanging out with my wife, we're doing XYZ. Obviously, you can get a lot from that and you can tell a lot about the conversation, where it's going, and how to handle it. And especially with things like technical support, learning how to ask probing questions that come off as helpful and not intrusive are really key, as well as separating what people mean versus what they are actually saying. Especially, like I said, with technical support, a lot of times people say, my phone isn't working. Great, great. I don't know what that means. And you have to ask a lot of questions to actually kind of get what they're trying to communicate or what they're trying to say. And all these feed directly into pretty much any sort of social engineering. Help desks. Obviously, help desks are a common target, whether it's from us or from threat actors, for a number of reasons. Obviously, the main and biggest one, or at least the one that you hear about the most, is they often have the ability to reset passwords in MFA. And it's a great way to get access into stuff. A lot of times they also have access to sensitive information and just they don't have any restrictions to it, or it's very light restrictions. And this can be either PII. A lot of times they just have unlimited access to anything because help desk might need it. Who knows? And also their entire job is built around helping people. When someone calls in, that is your job. It's to help them. So their entire incentive structure is built around that, including things like metrics. Anyone who's worked on a help desk or a call center or anything Oftentimes you will measure things like call time, take a turnaround, and these are all additional layers of stress and all additional incentives for them to get you off the phone as quickly as possible or to help you as quickly as possible, which directly feeds into them being an easier target, wanting to help you. And the other thing that I want to mention about help desks is usually when people talk about breaking in through help desks, or like even me talking about help desk, we're talking about like IT service desks or IT help desks or whatever. Depending on the size of the org, there may be different help desks, including things like HR help desks, which may not have the same policies written out for verification or disclosure of information, and you may be able to get PII or other info that way. So back to us on the ANTISOC team doing, our continuous penetration testing. As part of this, we try to pay attention to what's going on in the world and what is getting access. What are people, doing and what is working? And we see over and over and over that social engineering it works, which it is going to continue to work, and it will continue to be an effective tool in, any tester's arsenal. But we keep noticing, okay, help desk, MGM, help desk. Like we just keep seeing incident after incident after incident of help desk getting breached. So we're like, all right, maybe we should like start pushing on that a little bit more. And we do, and we continue to do so. And guess what? It's extremely effective. And it is effective to the point where this is often one of the first things that we will do and things that we will continually poke at and try. So as kind of an example of how this works, whether it's a threat actor calling in, whether it's us or whoever, a fairly high level kind of scenario is, you have either a target user or a list of users that you want to target. You do your basic recon on them. You get any sort of PII, phone numbers, addresses, what's their kid's name. If you really want to go into it, what's their dog's name? What's their favorite football team? Things that may be security question answers. Or you might even go look for things like last four social, which is often a security question as well. And these are all things that you can pretty easily find. And then once you have all this information, you display it in some format that is easy for you to digest and to use. I actually did have a single picture that I apparently forgot to put in there. And a lot of times what I will do is we'll make a little mind map. So you have a little picture of the person in the middle, and then, little snippets of information around that, which is really easy to reference. And so obviously once you do this, contact the help desk, you go through whatever process they have, whether it's, all right, what's your boss's name? What's your job title? Cool, you're in. Or what's your username? What's your employee ID, etc. And then once you're in, do whatever you want. And if that sounds overly simplified, it really often is that simple. But really the most complex part is just help desk to help desk, what policies you have. But overall, it really is that simple of a process to go through. And so some things that we have seen have been exploited by threat actors and things that we have seen that have helped us. The biggest one is simply not asking any authentication questions. And this is something that I have both seen reported and both stuff that I have seen is calling in and saying, cool, hey, I really messed up. I can't get in my computer. Can you, help us out? And we're like, cool. Yeah, let me help you out. Obviously, that's kind of an issue. So that's the big number one. Asking any sort of security questions that are fairly easy to answer. That are easily, looked up or ambiguous or whatever. What's your address? What's your phone number? I mentioned the last four of the social. I don't consider that a secure question at all because, again, you can look that up. We just had the national public data breach that has however many billions of people in it. They had the AT&T breach recently that had, again, millions of people's the full socials in it. Like that is something you can get. We've seen ones where there's questions are like, what's your work email? What's your username? Again, these are all things that can be easily enumerated. And then another common one that we will see that can be harder, but can still often get past is, what's your manager's name? A lot of places don't have external org charts or anything, but you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on any other site like that. You can just look up the company, do a basic Googling, and what we will often do is grab anywhere from like 5 to 7 names of people that we think might be likely. And so when you call in the help desk, like, all right, what's your manager's name real quick before I, help you out? And you're like, I have so many reports. I've been moved to like 12 different teams in the last couple of years. It might be Gary. Is it Gary? No, Bob, Sharon, and just listing through. And so many different times we've done that. And the third or fourth one, they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's the right one. I just, you had to say the right thing for me to help you out. And we're like, oh, no worries. Thanks for helping us out. Um, in general, just allowing the help desk test to bypass any sort of verification problems can also be a huge issue. Um, the if you A key part of a lot of social engineering is having really good confidence. And if you are able to establish that rapport and establish that trust with help desks, they may go around any sort of policies that they have, even if you're unable to answer questions, if you were just answering them incorrectly, confidently enough. And we've seen that multiple times get us access. Like, what's your dog's name? I'm like, Mittens? And they're like, oh, that's not right. I'm like, I really love Mittens, but I have had a lot of dogs that I really love. And they're like, I understand. Yeah, let's go ahead and get you helped out. Let's get you back in. I'm like, thanks. Um, a other big part is working on a help desk kind of sucks a lot of times, and I've worked on many of them. They're often understaffed, overworked. People are calling in angry, upset, and with issues. People are usually extremely hostile with you, and calling in and being very calm, polite, respectful, saying, "Hey, I really thank you for the help. I really appreciate, everything you're going and doing. Like, I appreciate the effort you're going for me and helping me out." Builds so much trust and camaraderie so quickly, and often will lead to things like I said earlier, where you can potentially bypass policies because they believe in you and they think of you as a helpful, nice person or a friend of sorts. Also, some companies will contract help desk work to third parties, whether that's a after hours or off hours on the weekends. Sometimes it is all help desk stuff. And this can potentially be an issue where either A, they don't know the rules and policies as well. They don't care. And like these are two very obviously big issues and that we have seen and have exploited. So, and then we paying attention to things like breaches, talking to other people, through our own testing. We also have noticed multiple things that we think are pretty effective at protecting organizations or, have at least made our lives much, much harder. One of the big ones is having self-service options to reset password and MFA and really pushing users to use them. And if you still are going to reset passwords or MFA, doing it as kind of a last resort, really being like, okay, I'm going to help you go through it, but you need to do this on your own, but let's go through it together. And if you are doing this, it is important to note that any sort of self-service option does need probably the same verification policies that you already need to use for your help desk. They shouldn't be able to go to the self-service option and again, answer any random piece of information and get in. A other thing that pretty much will often kind of stop you or threat actors dead in your tracks is if the help desk can't reset passwords or MFA, it becomes a lot harder to social engineer that and turn that into a situation that is helpful for you or that is going to get you or someone else access. And in which case we've seen that combined with the self-service options, which is really, really effective and as a really effective base protection. I have seen a lot of different orgs that, they help desk agents may have some direction. They'll be like, okay, ask them some question that only they would know, but there's no official policies. There's no actual rules or guidelines of things to ask. And if you don't have those, actually sitting down, running them through, thinking about them and actually writing them out is really important to have. And if you are going to do that and are thinking about that, some things to think about are you can use MFA for any sort of user verification. It's not just for when signing into things. It's having the help desk be able to push for a notification that the user has to approve or a code that they have to bring back. That's pretty effective. choosing good security questions, things that are not easily looked up. So, not their social security number, not where they live. Where did your mom and dad meet? What was your grandma's favorite food? Things that are very specific and definitely much harder to look up. And this good security questions is a kind of has a very big asterisk next to it because it is very different for very different people. And a lot of people have very different opinions on that. But there is lots of lists online that I definitely recommend looking into. Another thing that we really recommend is contacting a trusted third party. If someone calls into the help desk and is like, hey, again, I can't access my stuff. And you're like, yeah, sure. Let me call your manager real quick. I was not prepared for the first time that happening. I was like, oh, okay. What's the manager's name that you're calling again, real quick? I'll at least get that out of this. And like, again, things like that just all add up and are helpful. Again, ensure that the help desk has process for validating. Make sure that they have a process for escalating issues and have the ability to do so too. I've definitely worked on help desk where any reaching out to whether it's security or any sort of external support was a nightmare, and it could potentially get you fired or at least not, in trouble in some sort. Afterwards, maybe contact the user and say, hey, thank you so much for letting me help you out today. Let me know if you have any other issues. Just to review, we changed, your password, we reset your MFA, we did X, Y, and Z, and following up with users often very quickly. If it's not them, they will tell you. And the last thing is making sure that help desk technicians can say no. I can't tell you how many call centers I've worked at and how many help desks where you couldn't hang up the phone. Whether if someone's being suspicious or being abusive towards you, you just couldn't say no to anything. You always had to worm your way out of any sort of situations that was really bad or uncomfortable. Let your help desk say no if they think someone's being shady or if someone is unwilling to go through any sort of verification or authentication process. Thanks.